Fitting in is assessing a group of people and thinking, who do I need to be? What do I need to say? What do I need to wear? How do I need to act? And changing who you are. And true belonging is being a part of something bigger than yourself. But it's also...
I didn't know who I was for a very long time. And still I'm trying to learn who I am.
Yeah, me too.
You are?
Yeah.
But you seem like you have it all figured out.
Oh, God. No, I don't. No, I don't have it. I mean, first of all, I think the one thing I've learned in my research above all else is that in the absence of love and belonging, there's always suffering. So when I hear about your experiences growing up, that's suffering.
Yeah.
You know, that's real suffering. And for me, not making the drill team when I was, I think it was in 8th grade, by itself is not a lot. But how my family responded to it, it was like when things changed for me and I didn't feel like I belonged to my family anymore. So I think that I still am trying to figure it out. I don't know that I've interviewed anyone, even spiritual leaders, who have the belonging thing completely nailed, because I don't think it is what we think it is. You know, I don't think that it's having a big posse of friends or having a crew or rolling with a bunch of people. I think I'm still trying to figure it out because I still feel lonely and alone and on the outside of things on a really regular basis.
Really? I mean, you're going on a book tour with thousands of people, 15-city tour, millions of fans around the world, and you still feel alone.
Yeah, I can feel really lonely.
Why?
And it's really hard because, you know, you talk about that book tour. I'm severely introverted.
Yes. Super
private. And so I love that connection between me and an audience, but it can also be hard on me. And also, I'm talking about things that no one, it's weird to me that people sign up to talk about them, but they're hard topics sometimes. And we laugh and we have fun and we'll sing. But I think what I've learned in doing the research on belonging is that belonging is being a part of something bigger than yourself, but it's also the courage to stand alone and to belong to yourself above all else. And so I think I spend a lot of time belonging to myself, and sometimes that makes other people uncomfortable. And so I think that's hard. I think I do feel, I'm always looking for, I don't know about you, but I'm always looking for the roadmap. Like I want to find the researcher, storyteller, Christian, lover of all people, fighter of the resistance. I want to find the blueprint of who's ahead of me believing what I believe in and doing it really well. But there's not really a blueprint sometimes. From, you know, like
We're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
We're all trying to figure it out.
I don't get to copy anybody. And so it's hard.
Yeah.
It's still hard. But here's a thing that has changed everything for me. I belong to me. So even when I feel alone and I wonder like, who's my crew and who are my people, I belong to me for sure, for the first time in my life, maybe.
Yeah, and I think we lose ourselves sometimes by trying to belong in groups that we don't fit in.
Yeah.
You know, I remember being in, you know, the youngest on these sports teams growing up. I was playing on the junior varsity as a freshman or the varsity or whatever. So I was the youngest, and I remember just wanting to fit in, just like you did in the that team. And I wanted to fit in. I wanted to feel like they liked me, like I mattered, like I was the cool kid or whatever. And when they would do things that I didn't really agree with, or they would bully other kids or make fun of people, it's like I didn't want to not say anything. You know, I didn't want to stand against them because I wanted to belong.
Yeah.
So if I did stand up against them, then that means I was alone. And that was my biggest fear, was being alone.
No, yeah, because that's what teams and groups deliver. They deliver this thing that you're not alone.
Yeah.
The problem is I was so shocked to learn in the research that the opposite of belonging is fitting in. Because fitting in is assessing a group of people and thinking, who do I need to be? What do I need to say? What do I need to wear? How do I need to act? And changing who you are. And true belonging never asks us to change who we are. It demands that we be who we are. Because if we fit in because how we've changed ourselves, that's not belonging. That's not belonging, because you betrayed yourself for other people. And that's not sustainable.
Yeah, you start to lose yourself.
You start to lose yourself, exactly what you said. And so I think it's hard. You have to show up as who you are.
How do we find out who we are?
That's the life's work, right? That's freaking hard.
Do you know who you are?
Yeah, I do.
Who are you?
In what way?
If someone just said, who are you, Brene, what would you say?
Brene Brown. Mom, partner, researcher, storyteller, Texan. I don't know, I'd ask them how much time they have. Because, you know, the thing is that we want to, when we ask people who they are and we want to know, we like those really easy files to put them in.
Of course.
But I'm a complicated person.
Are you?
Yeah, and so I think I know who I am.
What makes you complicated?
I don't know if I'm complicated, but I'm complex.
You're interesting.
I hope so.
Very
some days
interesting.
yes, some days no.
Very interesting.
I think what makes me complex is, I think what makes everyone complex is the paradoxical nature of people. So, you know, like, I speak in public, I love doing that, but I'm incredibly introverted.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a traditionalist around things.
Yeah.
My kids say yes ma'am, no ma'am, but I also raise them to challenge authority every time they get the opportunity to do that, but to be really polite when they're doing it.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think I'm unapologetically earnest. Like, I believe in the goodness of people, but I believe it's hard work to stay out of fear and stay good.
Yeah.
And so I think I understand people. I think I have a lot of empathy, but I'm also not afraid of discomfort.
Yeah.
So I think there's just a lot of push and pull.
Sure.
And I think that's true of all of us. I do not like to be defined.
I think that's...
Do you?
I was going to say, I feel like my entire life, I didn't want to be defined as well. They were like, you're going to be this jock in college, you're going to be like this alcoholic, you're going to be in the frats.
Yeah.
All my siblings said this to me, and I was like, no, I'm not. I made a bet with each one of my siblings, $100 each, that I wouldn't have one sip of alcohol in college. Because I was like, I'm going to go against everything you think I'm going to be.
Yeah.
I joined the school musical because they were like, you're just going to do sports. I sang, I played guitar, I salsa dance. I was like, I'm going to do everything different than what people would expect of a tall, white man, right?
That's awesome.
I was like, I want to be different.
Yeah.
And I think in that process, I was like trying to discover who I really was, what I liked, my dreams, what was fun for me.
Yeah.
As opposed to just trying to fit the box and the mold of everyone else. Because you can lose yourself in that fitting in, I think.
You can lose yourself in the fitting in, and you can lose yourself in the rebuttal to the fitting in.
It's true. Trying to go against it all too,
Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, it's this thing that, it's a quote that is, Braving the Wilderness is all about this, starts with this quote from Maya Angelou, that we're never free until we belong nowhere, we belong everywhere, which is nowhere, which is no place at all, which I thought was a terrible quote for many years. And I was like, why are you saying that, Dr. Angelou? You're pissing me off.
Yeah.
But then I realized, really, and she says, the cost is high, but the reward is great. And I think that's the thing, that I feel like I belong everywhere I go, no matter where it is or who I'm with, as long as I never betray myself. And the minute I become who you want me to be in order to fit in and make sure people like me is the moment I no longer belong anywhere. And that is hard.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a hard practice. That's an everyday practice.
Wow.
Yeah, because I can be whoever you want me to be, like that.
You're like a chameleon, you said.
Oh, I can be totally like a chameleon. Like, sometimes it's really funny because, like, because I travel so much, I have all these miles, I always sit in business class, and I'm normally the only woman in business class. Every now and then there's one other maybe, which is a conversation we should be having too.
Sure.
But it doesn't matter what dude sits next to me. Like, I can talk about whatever that person, like, and it's so funny because we'll talk about sports usually first, or football, or we'll talk about politics, and he'll say, what do you do? And I'll say, I study vulnerability and shame. Oh, well, I'm gonna play some Angry Birds, and right that moment, like, I can just, and it's not that I know everything about everything, it's just.
So you're saying most men don't want to chime in and learn more about that?
No, that's usually, if I want to go to sleep, I'm like, I'm a shame researcher. What do you do? And you're like, okay.
Right.
but I think I can be anything. Like,
Yeah, you're adaptable.
I'm adaptable, and adaptable is great because anyone that comes to my home or here to work, I can make you feel comfortable.
Of course.
But then if I get so adaptable that my goal, my intention of adapting is to make sure you like me, then that's when I betray myself.
Yeah. What would you say is the time in your life you've been the most alone?
High school.
It's the whole journey.
Yeah, it just sucked.
It does suck.
It does. And my daughter just graduated from high school, and she had this amazing experience. Just incredible experience, and it was so healing to watch.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and I think it happened because she had the confidence to put herself out there, and student council president, and that kind. I think because we have a rule at our house that no matter what, you belong here. No matter how goofy, awkward, afraid, wrong, it doesn't matter. You belong here. And so I think when we give our kids a platform like that at home, it gives them the courage to take risks outside of home. Does that make sense?
Because they feel safe coming back. No matter what happens, they always have a place to come home to.
Yeah, and I grew up in a house where it was very chaotic. I'm the oldest of 4. And fitting in and being cool was the most important thing. So I think without that pressure, I probably would have never tried out for that drill team. But in my world growing up, you only did 2 things. You were a cheerleader or you were on the drill team, and preferably you married a running back or a quarterback. I mean, that was the way it went. And so for me, I probably would have been like president of the French club, or I would have been in debate or those kind of things.
Newspaper.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, photographer for the yearbook.
Yeah.
But those things did not have a lot of value.
Really?
No.
Your parents didn't instill that as something credible or worthwhile?
No, it's just cool was the number one value at home. Cool, lots of friends, popular.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't I wasn't that thing. I wasn't. And so what I did is I just started drinking, smoking weed, hanging out with, I found a place to be, cool. And, that just goes bad fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a conversation with your parents about this?
Oh yeah, we've talked about all of it.
You have?
Yeah.
You've let it go, you've processed it all?
Oh yeah, because they read my books as I write them, and they're, they're like, shit, this is exactly what every parent wants, a child who grows up to be a shame researcher. But no, that's the miracle of my parents. Like my parents, they've taught me the best thing about parenting that anyone I think could ever know, which is it doesn't end when your kids leave. Like they keep growing and exploring and learn, and however hard it was for me not being able to be we did not do vulnerability growing up.
Really?
No. Like our family motto was literally lock and load. Like get ready, family trips, you're in the car for 5 hours, that's all 6 of us. You really have to go to the bathroom, but the rest stop is on the other side of the highway. We're not pulling over. Like suck it up, hold it. Like we were tough. Like we'd fall down and get hurt. My dad would say like, I got bigger scratches than that on my eyeball. Like we were tough. And so, and we were taught to outrun vulnerability. We were taught to suck it up, soldier on, get her done.
Yeah.
And so, however hard that was for me growing up, imagine what it was like for my parents in the 50s. My dad, who was the youngest of 6, his dad died when he was 16,
Was he able to process that or no?
No, he just did the next thing you do.
Right.
Played football, played college ball.
Yeah.
My mom, who's my grandmother, who I named my daughter after, was an alcoholic. And she was drunk every other day of my mom's life.
Wow.
But she was the most amazing person in the world. But everyone knew she was an alcoholic, so my mom wasn't allowed to have friends at her house growing up because it was the 50s and she was divorced. And so my mom became the head of the drill team and the valedictorian. And so however hard it was for me growing up, having to try to outrun vulnerability, it was a million times harder on my parents.
Yeah.
And they did what they knew how to do. And they loved us as much as they could love us with the tools they had. And so I think the hard part comes from people that I've interviewed my whole life where the parents don't grow and change. And they see anything a child trying to do differently as criticism of what they did, as opposed to my parents who lean in and say, tell me more about that. I have a funny story. We hear a funny story about my dad? Yeah, it's great. So we do a lot of choice theory with my daughter and my son. And so my husband's a pediatrician. Okay. So like we know a lot about child development from school.
Right.
And so when Ellen was little, we used to do this thing where we would say, you have two choices. Like, Lewis, you have two choices. You can either hand me the water, I'm gonna have to take it from you. What is your choice? So that if you decide not to hand it to me and I have to take it, it's not my fault. That was your choice, right? And so one night I was talking to Ellen and we were at my dad's house in San Antonio and I was like, Ellie, you need to turn off Dora the Explorer. It's time to go to bed. And she's like, mm-mm. And I said, Ellen, you have two choices. You can get up and turn off the TV or I'm gonna get it up and turn it off for you. And if I have to get up and turn off the TV, you're going to lose privileges to watch it tomorrow.
And that's your choice.
Yeah, that's your choice. So and I would hate that for you, but that will be your choice. And my dad was sitting in the recliner next to me and he's like, damn, sis, what are you raising, a hostage negotiator? And I was like, Dad, and he's like, seriously, Brene? We had 4 of y'all, we didn't have time for that.
Yeah.
So the next day I come home, I'm visiting friends in San Antonio and he's watching Ellen and he's in the driveway. It's like 110 degrees in San Antonio and he's sweating. He's like, Ellen, you have two choices. You can either put the bicycle up or I'm gonna have to put it up for you. And the second one's a dumbass choice. So I was like, wow, you're so close.
You're getting there.
You're getting there. But
you're getting there.
My parents are amazing in that way that like, they're learning and changing. So I think it's harder when parents say, I'm done. What you got was what you got. No apologies, no change, no amends, take it or leave it. Yeah. And if you do it differently with your own kids, you're a sucker.
Wow.
And I think we see that a lot.
Yeah, we do. I mean, what should parents be learning about how they can grow? I mean, how can they start to be aware? Because I think it starts with being aware.
Yeah, for sure.
Of what they know and what they don't know, and being receptive to learning something different, which is really hard to do. I think once you've had these habits for so long. So that's the first thing, and I want to dive into the lack of vulnerability with what's happening in Charlottesville right now as well, because I know you did something on that this morning. So I guess how can parents listen to this and be aware and be willing to move forward in a different way of learning something new when they're so stuck in their ways, potentially, that it's worked for them to this point to get to where they're at?
I believe this with my whole heart. I believe that 99.9% of parents are truly waking up every day and doing the very best they can with what they have.
Yeah.
I don't think there are a lot of parents who wake up and maliciously try to screw up their kids or hurt their kids or belittle or shame their kids. I think we're doing the best we can with what we have. And so I think to let go of the idea that if I have done something that I could have done better or that I could learn from, that I have to just come down. People defend their parenting like they're defending their lives because it's such a shame minefield.
Yeah.
I mean, a great example is the work you're doing around men and vulnerability. I cannot tell you the number of fathers and the hundreds, if not thousands of fathers I've interviewed that said, I shamed my son every time he was vulnerable.
Yeah.
I put him down, I made fun of them, I hit him every time he was vulnerable. And now I look back and I know it's because that's the way I was raised, or I was afraid he'd be soft and get hurt at school, or whatever the thing is. And so I think for parents, it's about understanding, giving yourself permission to not have been, I'm not perfect. I've never not been a researcher and a parent. My husband's a pediatrician. Our kids will be in therapy.
You're right.
And the reason why I think that'll be so successful is there's only two kind of kids you raise. Kids who will ask for help when they need it, or kids who won't. And that's as good as it gets, is to raise a kid who'll ask for help.
Yeah, I never asked for help.
Yeah.
I was always suffering inside.
Yeah, right.
And I always felt shameful, guilty,
right.
And my way of asking was being angry, resentful, mad, hitting people in sports or outside of sports, because that's all I knew.
I'll tell you a story about a guy that I interviewed, one of the first men I interviewed when I went from interviewing all women to men, was a guy who I said, what is shame for you? And he used the P-U-S-S-Y word, which is like just synonymous with shame in male culture, right?
Yeah.
And he said, I'll never forget the day that changed my life. He said, I was at football practice. I was a freshman in high school. And he said, the coach yelled, get on the line. And I didn't want to get on the line of scrimmage, in case people don't know. I know you know, but he asked me to make sure I walked through all the sports metaphors with him now.
Exactly.
And he said, I was afraid to get on the line because I know, it's where people crash into each other. And so I must have had fear on my face because my coach looked at me and said, don't be a PUSSY, get on the line. And he said, that's the day that I learned that the way you deal with that is you change that fear into rage. And he said, and I just plowed over the guy across from me. And then he said, then I spent the next 20 years plowing over my wife, my children, my colleagues, the people who worked for me.
Yeah.
He said, that's what I did with my fear.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely relate.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember being picked last on a team once when it was a co-ed sport. We were playing dodgeball on the playground. I think it was 3rd or 4th grade. And there was 2 captains, 2 guys. And they were picking one at a time, right?
Oh,
and
God, brutal.
They pick all the guys.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to be the last guy chosen.
Yeah.
But then they go and pick all the girls. And then I'm going to pick my name. I'm just by default the last picker's team. And so as a boy trying to fit in 3rd, 4th grade, it was devastating. And I told myself in that moment, I was like, never again will I be picked last at any sport.
I'll do whatever it takes.
I am going to be a machine. I'm going to train for 6 hours a night. I'm going to, take no prisoners mentality and I dominated on that dodgeball game that day. I was just like throwing the ball, like just diving everywhere. I was like, never again.
Did you ever get picked last again?
Never got picked last again.
Right.
But, and it helped me achieve, was all state in multiple sports, was all American in 2 sports. I broke world records. I played professional football. I play on the USA handball team now. And it guided me towards achieving these things, but it left me feeling very unfulfilled every time I'd achieve them. Or anytime we lose, it was like an attack on my life. Every loss we ever had on a sport, it was like my life was at stake. And I felt like I was worthless. Because if I didn't win, that meant no one was gonna accept me, or I wasn't good enough, or I was gonna be picked last or something. So I would take it so personally when I wouldn't win. And then I would take it out on my family, my girlfriends, my friends, everything. And I didn't know how to communicate. And I'm still learning, I'm still imperfect every day, but it's like, I wasn't even aware. There was never information about how to connect or how to communicate and feel like it was okay or you're allowed to. Because anytime you try to talk about any vulnerabilities as a guy growing up for me, it was like, you're a PUSSY.
Yeah.
Or don't be a little girl. Or don't be a BITCH, all these things. Yeah. And so I think it's very hard for me, and especially for a lot of men who grew up, to stand alone and feel like they belong in an isolated world if they're not going to join a group that's going to make fun of them or put other people down. So how do we stand alone when we're not introverted or we want to be around other people? And how can men communicate better or feel like it's okay to be vulnerable?
Yeah.
Because we were talking before about how, most men that I know, played sports with, would never watch The Power of Vulnerability TED Talk, or they would never read, books from you or Oprah that I'm aware of, because they would talk bad about, female leaders trying to talk about vulnerability.
Yeah.
They would say, that's soft, that's weak.
Yeah.
I don't watch that stuff, I don't read that stuff. When really that's the stuff we need the most, in my opinion.
And I think it's changing. I think I told you earlier that I think 50% of the readers of Daring Greatly are men, and the vast majority of leaders who bring me into organizations are men. And I'll tell you why.
Wise men.
I hope. I can flip it for you on a dime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it used to take me when men would say, this is how the call would go, hey, we'd love for you to come in and work with our leadership team. We saw your TED Talk, we thought it was great. Are you available? And I'd say, sure, what do you want me to talk about? And they'd say, anything but vulnerability and shame. And I would say,
why? Yeah.
So what do you want me to talk about if I don't talk about vulnerability? And they'd say, courage. And then I'd say, okay. Then I would try to spend like a half an hour explaining the relationship between vulnerability and courage.
Yeah.
Because all men want to be brave.
Isn't vulnerability courage?
Vulnerability is courage. So I only have to ask.
Isn't vulnerability power?
Yes, I have to ask one question to flip the whole thing. It's this. Vulnerability is defined as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Can you name one act of courage that you've ever been involved in or that you've ever even witnessed that did not involve uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure? And it's a loaded question because I know the answer is no, because I've asked it thousands and thousands. I've stood in front of Navy SEALs and Special Forces military personnel and said, give me an example. I want you to try hard to give me an example of courage that didn't require vulnerability. And in 10 years, I've never had a single person be able to come up. I've even had 2 guys come up to me who were in the military that said, we're going to think about it and get with you.
They
and
never
I said,
got back
oh
to
my
you.
God, I said, do it. I would love it. Give me an example of courage, even on the field, that doesn't involve vulnerability. Like if you think you're being brave and it doesn't involve risk or uncertainty, you're not being that brave. If you know how it's going to turn out, it's not courage. And so in that moment, people go, shit, but I want to be brave and I don't want to be vulnerable. And I'm like, therein lies the great dilemma of our time.
Right.
Yeah, no one wants to be uncomfortable. No one wants to be vulnerable and everyone wants to be brave. And it just doesn't work like that.
Right. And anytime we try something new, we've got to be uncomfortable.
It's vulnerable.
Yeah, it's vulnerable.
Yeah. I mean, when I ask people what is vulnerability, people would say initiating sex with my wife, sending my child out the door who thinks he's going to make the first chair in orchestra and knowing he's probably not going to make the orchestra at all, getting fired, starting my own business, saying I love you first in a relationship, trying to get pregnant after my first miscarriage. I mean, like, vulnerability it's uncertainty. It's not knowing, but doing it anyway, because it's the brave thing to do. And so the problem is, I think, that the greatest shame trigger for men is do not be perceived as weak. And in our culture, we believe that vulnerability is weakness. So you don't have to skip too many steps before you go, hey, it's shaming to be vulnerable. And so men do 2 things in the face of shame: pissed off or shut down.
Put on a mask.
Put on a mask.
Yeah.
And so what we're learning and what people are starting to see very quickly is you cannot be a courageous leader if you're not vulnerable, if you're not willing to have hard, uncomfortable conversations, give hard feedback, receive hard feedback, excavate issues like Charlottesville that no one wants to talk about. Like discomfort is the great enemy of courage. Like my motto is, we say it here all the time, choose courage over comfort, because you can't have both. And if you think you're being brave and you're super comfortable, you're not being that brave.
I never wanted to feel the emotional pain. It was so hard to go through. I got a breakup with a girlfriend. Like, I didn't know how to deal with the emotional loss of any type of pain or suffering as a man. And I remember being in the fetal position my freshman year in college for days, sobbing in my dorm room, just curled up in a ball because a relationship ended and I was so sad to be alone and I didn't have this person in my life anymore. And I would take it out on the football field. I was like, I don't want to feel this type of emotional pain, so how can I inflict as much physical pain on myself and other people to get it out? And it's hard to switch that off and just be like this loving, vulnerable man after you're on the football field, like inflicting pain on other people because you're supposed to.
No, and I think whether we play football or not, we're much better at causing pain than we are feeling pain.
You don't want to feel it.
No, you don't. And so we cause it and we hurt other people.
Yeah, we do.
And so, and if you look at leadership, whether you're in an organization leading a country, leading a family, as a parent, one of the cheapest, easiest ways to lead is to give people someone to hate and blame for your misery. And so we have to really watch that in our country right now. So all you have to do when people are in uncertainty and fear is give them someone to blame and give them a reason to blame them, and then step back and watch everything just fall apart. And so I think that's happening right now in our country. And so we have to push away the rhetoric. We have to own our pain. And let me tell you, it's not like you tell that story about the football field and it's so prophetic, because every crisis we're up against right now, almost without exception, is about our inability, our unwillingness to deal with pain. If you look at the opioid addiction right now across, somewhere, beginning with physicians, sent the message, there's no reason for you to hurt at all.
Here's a pain reliever.
Here's a pain reliever, and things are not going well in your life. Well, here's a way to discharge hate and pain that'll make you feel better. Like
by drinking or by smoking or
we're the
sex
most,
or drug, whatever.
Medicated, addicted, in debt, and obese Americans in history. Like, our tolerance for discomfort is zero.
Soft.
Yeah. So here's the irony. Soft. So our
what
tolerance.
we're taught in football. Don't be soft.
Don't be soft. So it's actually our inability to be vulnerable that makes us weak.
So how do we come to terms with our identity when it's probably, we're never going to have the full truth about everything from our past? Even myself, who I knew my parents are, I don't know what they all went through and their past went through. What is our true identity?
Okay.
Even stripping down all the labels.
Yes.
What is our true identity?
Okay, so I think the identity is found when you do what you do. I watch you do this. You are a professional at stopping, looking, and listening. Most people, they move so fast through life that, as you've heard it said, they are human doings rather than human beings. You are in the moment, okay? Sure, you're doing a ton of things, but you'll take the time to go freeze your butt off in ice. What's Lewis doing, man? He's in ice in some country, okay? So I think that when you stop and you look within and you just listen, the real you starts to speak to you. Because your dream and your identity has a voice. So I believe that little Timmy Story knew I was going to be a freaking world leader, even when I felt like in that house, it's like a garage. The guy that's supposed to be my dad just took all 4 kids and left my butt at home. Inside of me, in that quiet, I did what I just said. I was stopping, I was looking within, and I was listening. And there would be a time that I would unfold as we see now.
Should we be wishing for an easier life and less unfairness and less pain? Or should we be saying, you know what? These are the things that made you who you are today.
Yes.
If you had a warm, cozy identity, family, maybe you wouldn't have been so interested in seeking wisdom and seeking answers to help other people going through that.
Yeah. I don't blame people for wishing for an easier life, but the reality is a song by the Byrds, and it's called Turn, Turn, Turn. It was big in England and then got big in America, and it's based on the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, which you've heard as you were a kid. And that is, there's a time and a season for everything, a time to tear, a time to mend, a time to be silent, a time to speak, a time to laugh, and a time that you'll mourn. So there's just seasons in life. So as long as I know there's a winter, there's a spring, there's a summer, there's a fall. Okay? So as a person who studies spirituality, as a doctorate in world religion, I will say this to you. COVID-19 has been a winter season, but of a heck of a long winter, right? Still masked, okay? Quarantine. Guys like us who love to travel, we talked earlier, we're not moving around as much as we used to. So that's a long winter. But there's lessons to learn in the winter. There's lessons to learn in that pain. So I need to have that pain, because that pain, when I am in that winter season, okay, I can use that pain as a library. Man, pain has been my library. Watching people go through pain, seeing guys do stupid stuff, and it gets them in a lot of trouble. I'm like, don't do that stupid thing, right? So it's not just my pain, it's the pain I've witnessed.
You mentioned about spirituality and your path of studying this for a long time.
Yeah.
How important is our spiritual health in supporting our mental health?
Yes.
Or can we be mentally and emotionally fit without spiritual fitness as well?
Yeah, excellent question. I think that from my perspective, and even studying a lot of your friends and my friends, I think it starts in the spirit. I think that it starts in the spirit. And that's why when I see you in various countries and you take great photos and you really look like you're like in a nice place, like you're in the moment. And as your buddy, I'm like, good going, because I know how busy you are. But I think that what's happening at that time is that something's happening to your soul. Your soul is being fed, and your soul is the center of your being, because out of your soul comes the goodness of your heart. Out of your soul comes forgiveness. Out of your soul comes gratitude. It comes from the soul. So if we're not fed in the soul, okay, then no matter how strong your mind is, there's going to be conflict.
Interesting.
And the Bible talks about that. It says a double-minded person is unstable in all his ways. So your mind could be like, okay, I'm like, I believe it all. But your soul could just be broke down. So I know people that have a broke down soul because of conflict and trauma, but yet their mind is kind of strong, but they are unstable.
Sure.
There has to be an alignment here, and then you're pretty much unstoppable.
For those who might have challenges with religious context, or maybe doesn't believe in every element of the religion they're in, but they want to be spiritual.
Yes.
They want to have a connection to something greater than themselves. They want to have a connection to God or the source of the universe.
Yes.
What suggestions would you have for them, whether they're not in a religion, but they want to be connected to their soul?
Yeah, and I would say like 75% of my followers are not religious people. They're just like people that want to live a better life. So I think that one of the things that helps you is to go to beautiful parts of creation where we have not put concrete on it.
Go to nature.
Go to nature. Doesn't that do it for you? Okay. So whether you go to the desert or you go to the mountains or you go to the ocean, it's strange, man. Your soul just starts to be fed. So I would say to somebody, go to somewhere where there's not a lot of concrete and where the earth is breathing, and watch how soulful you feel and how fed you start to feel. Yes.
I want to shift the conversation to relationships between parents and their kids.
Yes.
I don't have kids. I have amazing parents that weren't perfect, that had a lot of challenges for me when I was growing up that I needed to overcome, and took many years to overcome that, and still I'm overcoming things. What do you think is the biggest mistake that parents make in general with raising kids? And what was the biggest mistake you think you made in your journey of being an unperfect parent, like all parents are?
Yeah. Okay. So here's what I think. I think, number one, this idea of putting pressure on our kids that they have to become something by a certain age. Okay? Like, truly.
Once you leave college, you need to be this. And then by 25, you need to be
100%. It's the worst thing a person can do. Because at 18, really, do I have to say for sure I want to be a pharmacist?
Right. I have no idea what I would have. It's when I hang out with my friends and play video games,
exactly.
Right?
Like, can I show up at Ohio State with an undeclared major?
Yeah.
And so, again, I think as parents, they always think they have to decide. Come on, you're 17. You're about to go to college. You need to decide. No, some things you discover.
Ooh, yeah.
So some things is not the decision, it's the discovery. Like some of those brilliant guys that we get to talk to, I'm telling you, it was not in the decision, it was in the discovery. Like, I'll give you a cool one, like Vidal Sassoon. So he was a really good friend of mine, and Eden, his daughter, I talk to all the time. So we're sitting on Cannon Drive in Beverly Hills just talking about life. He's Vidal Sassoon, right? You like see his name everywhere. That was not his plan, like to be Vidal Sassoon.
Sure.
And so he told me how he saw this guy and this guy inspired him and he decided to try it. So one of the biggest mistakes parents make is that they don't let their kids try something because they think, well, what if they fail? What if they fail? What if they fail? Well, then they learn something. And so, again, I think the pressure to decide now instead of the discovery is one. And another thing is this. I see a lot of parents try to make up for their life that they missed, and they lived an almost life, but that's not going to happen to little Johnny.
Ooh.
Little Kylie, she's not going to have to go through what I went through. So they overdo it.
Yeah, a lot of pressure on the kid.
So much pressure. I was on the elevator in Miami, and this lady looked at me, and she goes, "Hey, I recognize you." I go, "Well, good to see you." And we started chatting about life, and she had this little kid, and she goes, "Do you know my daughter knows all 50 states?"
Wow.
It was just a little tiny kid. I never even asked.
Right.
And I went, "Whoa,
Yeah.
that's amazing." Guess what? The kid just started spitting out the states, because that was the connection between the mother
Sure.
and the child is perform, do, right? Be advanced. So I think a lot of parents, another mistake is, like I said, they try to make up for what did not happen in their life, and they overcompensate. Not a great idea.
And what do you feel like was the thing that you did, the mistake?
Exactly what I just said.
Is that it? For your kids?
Yes. Yeah. I think that, number one, I'm glad I didn't name my son like Tim Story Jr. because that would have been not so great. So my son is the type that he's an artist. He's an artist. So I would say, like, okay, so do me a favor. Go over there and do those 3 things, because I'm about to do an interview and I need you to help me.
Sure.
Okay. So then I'd look at him. He's still playing video games. Okay. He's 14.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that I didn't understand what his strengths were at that time. And what I should have looked for is his strengths were more in the creativity, and let him soar with his strengths, and not like be tough on him because he didn't move at the pace that you move at or I move at.
How do we let go of these expectations as parents? I'm trying to learn.
Yes.
For my 5-year ahead self.
Yes. Okay. So an expectation, as you know, is something that we've kind of ordered, and now we want it to arrive the way it arrives. Okay. So this is like very much your culture, even more than mine because I'm older.
Sure.
Where you just
I want it now. Yeah. Give it to me.
You got used to just being in your nice locations that you live in, and I want to order.
Food comes to me.
Here it comes.
Yeah.
Oh, whoa! This is wild. I can't believe it's just semi-warm.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. They had to bring it from there into a car, right? So I think that in your culture and where you are in life, that you guys are so used to like everything like so
instant
and the immediate, and so really what I see life as now. Oh, this is so good. I see life as it unfolds. Man, it unfolds. Like my son's in a beautiful place in his creativity. My daughter's in a beautiful place in her creativity. But they did challenge me as they got older, and they would say to me, "Dad, could you not life coach us at least for just a couple days?"
Sure.
Because I didn't realize that that's what I was doing. Like I was making everything about a life coach.
You should be doing this, or why don't you try this thing, or why don't you do this, as opposed to allowing them to discover it.
100%. And in the discovery, and in the slow rollout, they have found a better rhythm for themselves. You're going to love this. In the game of cards, as you know, if you don't like your hand, you can fold. So I see my cards, I don't like it, so I decide to fold. I feel like a lot of people that are watching right now, they have folded their dreams before they really unfolded. So they folded thinking like, this is me. I'm married. I got this many kids. This is my life. It didn't work out. I fold. This is my existence. I disagree. You're still unfolding. But I'm 42. You're still unfolding. I'm 58. I'm still unfolding. So don't fold while you're still unfolding.
Yeah, some people don't even pick up the cards and look at them. You know, they get dealt the cards and they say, I'm too scared to even pick it up because, you know, and so they just don't even play the hand.
Yes. But again, I don't blame the parents for wanting their children to do well, mostly if they see other children not doing well. But kind of back off a little bit. And if you feel like you've trained your children in a good way with character and morals and really to be strong children, they'll find their way. They will find...
They'll figure it out.
They'll figure it out.
So how do we as parents, I say we, like I am a parent, but how do parents learn to allow their kids to discover themselves more while also giving structure and organization, but not too much pressure?
Communication. Okay. So one of the things that I started doing with my kids, and it was kind of painful to me, is I would then say to them, like when they were teenagers, okay, let's talk about like, what would you like me to do different? And it shocked me that they had things
feedback.
To say.
Yeah.
Yes. Dad, I just feel like you're boom and bam and boom.
Too hard on us here and this. Yeah.
Yes. And my daughter, she's very, very smart. And she said to me one time, she goes, Dad, I just feel like you think you have to be on. You don't have to be on. I know that when you go somewhere outside this house, there's expectations. You don't need to be on for us in here. Like, that blew me away. But she was right.
Just be here. Don't be on here.
Yes, because I was so used to being on a stage so often that even when I come into the house, I'm like, it's going to be a big night. Okay. Let's watch this movie. Then we're going to,
Sure. Now, you went into a spiritual, religious path after school, right? You went on to study religion, spirituality, and essentially be a preacher for many years.
Yeah, I became a very famous preacher.
Yes.
So, and I know you have friends that are famous ministers, and you roll with the guys from a lot of different religions, just like I do. But I didn't try to become a famous minister. That was wild, to be honest. So let's see how we put it. I was just out there minding my own business, and I was doing something for inner city kids. And I look in the back, there's a tall guy. It was Reggie White. Reggie White, the football player, right? You love football.
Sure.
Okay. So Reggie White was there. And Reggie White had heard from a friend of his about this guy, Tim Story, that was speaking in these inner city schools and just amping people up. Okay. So he started getting me in NFL chapels in my early 20s. So I'm in my early 20s, speaking at all these chapels. And then that exploded for me in the NFL. I was in all these teams. So that gave me a little bit of leverage.
Yeah, credibility.
Yeah. Look at he rolls with all these guys, right?
Sure.
And then it went from that to more and more churches started to invite me. And then the bigger guys in the space, it's almost like the space of what we have as speakers today in our world that we walk in. The big guys of the ministry world saw Tim's story.
Sure.
And they started taking me with them. I was like the opening act.
Sure. It's great. It's awesome.
So I was the opening act. So I was speaking to 3,000, that's super young, 5,000. I had a conference of 8,000 people when I was 29 years of age. That was my conference. So I was I was a boy wonder, but I was still very vacant. I was vacant. Because remember it went back to identity.
Sure.
Still didn't really know who I was.
Really?
Okay. I was trying to find myself. Did I believe in the message? Yes. Did I believe in what I was speaking? Yes. But there was a real void in my life that I do not feel today.
How do we chase our dreams when we have that void? Or we don't know who we truly are still? Or we're still seeking answers? How can we fully be confident in that message, that work, whatever it is that work that we're in, that field?
I honestly think that when you feel like you're chasing, and the void is there too long, that you have to call it a necessary timeout. And because we both love sports, Phil Jackson was the master of the timeout. And here's what he said about it. He said, you don't see me calling too many timeouts because I believe that what I taught the players in practice that they'll figure out during the game. Pretty cool, right? He said, so if you see me call a timeout, it is totally necessary. So
they're in breakdown mode. They're not figuring it out. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that there's times in your life and my life where we're playing hurt.
Yeah.
But you still have to be Lewis and I still got to be Tim. You still got to do your conference. I got to show up at a conference, right?
You got to show up even if you're 70, 80%.
100%. So we both know how to play hurt. But there are times where there needs to be a timeout. We need to come to the sideline and we need to regroup. And that's what the pandemic has done for Tim's story. That's when I decided with my editor to talk about the situation with who is my dad for the first time, because I thought that I would just, not tell anybody for my whole life, for real. Wow. And that's where I've got so much peace in my life, so much joy. I think I'm more funny than ever. It's like, yeah. So the pandemic to me has been like a big Phil Jackson timeout. It's been a reset for me.
What is the blessing that comes from you finally talking about this or accepting it or acknowledging it fully and being open to sharing it publicly? What happens inside for you and what happens for other people when they finally do whatever that is for them?
I think the blessing of talking it out with Dr. Helen Mendez, the lady from USC, was that I could say it and she knew I was not judging my mother. I was not judging my sisters for not telling, and my brother, that I was not judging anybody, but I had a safe place to tell the story.
Yeah.
And I think the one reason that I'm being more open about my life nowadays is because all of us feel undone. We all feel undone. I mean, here I write a book on the miracle mentality. Miracle is extraordinary, uncommon, not normal. But at the same time, I feel undone. And that's okay. I think we all have something that's slightly hanging out. There's some kind of injury in us, right? And so in telling the story, it is liberating me even more, and I think it's going to liberate a lot of people.
Oh, that's cool. I'm curious about, because I think a lot of us hold on to shames, whether they're little shames or big shames.
Yeah, no doubt.
Maybe this was a big shame for you or a little shame that you were holding on to for many years.
This is a gigantic shame.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think a lot of us, I held on to shames for many years on the sexual trauma that I went through as a kid, but then other just like little shames, throughout the years. I shouldn't have said that. Or, maybe that was a white lie. Or was I in integrity in this moment? Holding on to these little shames. What I've realized is that when we fully own the shame, big T, little t, trauma, big S, little s, shame, and we embrace it and we do talk about it, whether it doesn't have to be publicly in this format, but just with someone trusted, and we own it and we embrace it and we learn to let it go, then we can be fully ourselves. We don't have to hold on to some identity that isn't supporting us anymore.
Yeah, I think you even have a deeper revelation on that than I do. And I will tell you that I've learned from you in this by reading your book about this whole idea of, taking off the mask. And then let me just tell you an observation I have of my friend Lewis. When I went to your conference and I see you running this big conference, which I think, and I'm not joking, is the best conference because it's boutique, it's packed, there's so many creatives in it, okay? And I see you have to go from organizer. You're the organizer. And when you're organizing, there's always something going on, right?
It's always some breakdown.
But then you can turn around to a famous guest and then be the nice person. Then your attention to detail with your team, of course, of, hey, let's buy presents for these people.
Right.
And you bought really cool presents for all of the speakers. Then I'm not done yet. Then you got to go up and perform and speak like you're Lewis Howes. So so look at all the hats you're wearing. Okay. Then, you have friends and close friends and family you got to be nice to and all that. But I love that you can go from that. This is a really cool moment. So then you have a party with your DJ buddy. Okay. So then I see Lewis from like college days.
Just like house party. Ah.
Yeah. So you're like dancing and that. And I'm older than you. And I'm like, come from this ministry background in which, I was at the biggest churches in the world, 80,000 people, 20,000 people. I'm like, I'd walk in there like, oh, here he is, right? And Louis, you grabbed me to like, Story, get up here. Okay. So I get on the stage and I started dancing with you guys. I never got a chance to tell you this. Freedom came to me.
Ooh.
Like such freedom. Because if the religious people were watching that move, they'd be like, what's he up to? Because the song had a lot of F words in it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So then you at your size and your svelte body, then you stage dive, and then you come out, and then you're like, come on. You're hyping me like you hype me. And then I go, man, you talk about freedom.
What did that feel like?
You talk about freedom. So I'm telling you, as a little brother that you are to me, thank you for having the damn guts to dig deeper than I did at your age. Because to be honest with you, I was afraid to unpeel the onions because I didn't know what I was going to find down there.
What is the self-talk you do internally? If you don't have a mirror, if you're not alone in a bathroom, what's your process that you say to yourself? What are the reminders? What are the mantras, meditations that you think about before that?
It always helps me to voice it whenever I'm insecure. I'll write about it somewhere, or I'll speak to somebody who I trust, my mom, my husband, my best friend. But I find it easier to talk about it. So that's why I have a healthier relationship with my insecurities, because I take away their power by discussing them. I choose not to live with them alone in the dark recesses of my mind, because then they become monsters, and then they become really, really large, and they're usually not real. So it's always been very helpful to me whenever I'm feeling crazy or insecure or afraid, or even if I feel like I've made a mistake. My dad told me this when I was very young, when I was 16, the first time. He sat me down and he gave me a glass of champagne. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, you're 16, you're going to have a glass of champagne with me. You're going to do it anyway. It was like, and he told me, he was like, whatever happens in your life, you should feel free to be able to do it with your parents. There's nothing to hide from us. I'll always be in your corner. And, he told me that about feelings. I always had the freedom to talk to my mom or my dad as a kid about anything I was feeling. At least to my father, I wouldn't discuss the boyfriends, but with my mom, she was like my best friend. She knew about every, object of attraction that I ever had. And I think that sort of gives you the sense of confidence to be able to talk about it. And I just think it's a great first step to get rid of insecurity.
I'm just a big believer. I love everything you're saying, and I'm just a big believer that if people really listen to this and understand, take it in what you're sharing, that it's hard to achieve anything without confidence. You could have the greatest experience, you could have the greatest degree, the skills, you could have the family, you could have the money, like you could have good looks, whatever it is, you could have the stuff. But if you don't know how to build confidence when it matters, it doesn't matter if the world believes in you. If we don't believe in ourselves, nothing's going to happen. And
the world won't believe in you if you don't believe in you. And I think, like, as someone in the public profession, my job is to be entertaining and be confident and in every step that I take and in every move that I make. But I think recognizing that confidence is not something we are born with. It's a skill. It's like, it's a muscle almost. If you think of it like going to the gym. And, to have muscles and to be in shape, you got to work at it. Just like the vocal cords, the greatest musicians in the world, they use their vocal cords. They do riyaz, like we call it in Hindi, but which is warm-ups and stuff like that. So confidence to me is like that. You start using that at a very small level. Everyday life, when you're in school, there were times when I was in school where I used to take the other hallway because I didn't want to bump into someone else. When I started high school, by the time I was in 11th grade, I was walking in the middle of the hallway.
You're strutting around, you're getting people moving away. Yeah.
I was like, excuse me. I didn't even have to say that. I was just walking and that's the same person. But I think that in any profession or any aspect of life, perception is reality. Most people believe that, right? You know that how people perceive you is what they think reality is. So give them something perceivable.
Amen to that. What would you say are 3 things on a daily basis that you do to build confidence that you think anyone could apply for their life, even if they feel like they have no confidence?
When I wake up in the morning, I take time in the bathroom. Like I shower, I will, pick the outfit that I'm feeling today. I will, sort of doing my makeup and my hair sort of helps me, or my skincare routine actually at night helps me be sort of introspective. Otherwise, through the day, I'm very erratic. I have, multiple balls in the air. Professionally, I'm doing a lot of things. I'm always behind on time. I'm always playing catch up. So at the end of the night and the beginning of the day, I really give myself some silence. I play music and, I put my creams on and I really think about what the day is going to be like and how my first step outside the room is going to be. When I take that first step outside my safe space, it sets the tone for my day. So I try not to have it be erratic or scary or like, if I'm late and if I'm running, that always sets the tone for my energy through the day. So I try to really, start my day on the tone I want to have and the confidence I want to have. And at every given step during the day, I remind myself of the things I have instead of the things I don't have. Like insecurity comes from, a lot of it sometimes I think comes from, oh my gosh, I don't have this, it's not good enough, or I'm not good enough for a particular scenario or a particular situation, or, we start judging ourselves. And this was another lesson, actually, an activity that my mom and I used to do is we used to count our blessings. And, me and my husband do it too whenever we're feeling crazy because our schedules are insane. We're, always in different parts of the world. We do that. We count our blessings, about just 5 things that whenever you're feeling sort of crazy and unstable, that, you have that you're really grateful for. And I'm not even saying this superficially. This was like truly an exercise. No matter how badly off you are, someone else is worse off than you. That makes it so easy to count your blessings.
I mean, especially watching this this latest movie that you're in. I mean, White Tiger. Right? I've only been to India once. I went there 4 years ago and studied meditation in Chennai for a couple of weeks. But I went to Delhi and kind of traveled around a little bit. I didn't see everything, but I saw a lot of dark things and a lot of things that were constantly reminding me, wow, I have a lot to be grateful for every moment. So I think it's important to have that perspective in our lives that we always have something to be grateful for. Even when it's the darkest time, there's something to be grateful for.
Absolutely. And that's so empowering. That to me is my greatest mantra is, truly and tangibly do it, on your fingers do it, like just 5 things. And it's a great exercise to do with someone as well, your kids, your family, anytime. It's just like 5 things, then you have to just rattle it out. The 5 things that you can think of at that point. But, the crazy part about the White Tiger is that it's based in India and you probably reacted to it because it's shot so authentically. But if you think about it, the majority of the world lives in those conditions, and the socioeconomic divide that exists right now is only increasing. Like even the Sustainable Development Goals have been set to eradicate extreme poverty because it's such a big problem. There's such a large population of the world. And we as privileged society, we as privileged people, anyone who has a roof above their head and meals on their table is privileged. And as privileged people, like that's something that's our concern. There's a large generation of children who don't have a choice in their future or in their lives. They don't know if they can have aspirations or dreams. And how desensitized are we? When last time, you've driven past a homeless shelter and you've not even looked at it, or a homeless person and not even looked at them. It's the desensitization that we as people who have, and that's the differentiation between the have-nots. But it's also a reality, and it's a reality everywhere in the world.
I don't want to give away the whole movie. I want everyone to watch it because it was really powerful and inspiring to see someone come from, poverty to essentially become, an entrepreneur and be successful in their own way. And the story is really powerful. But you took on a role that is, I found fascinating because that's probably not, I don't know if that's how you would react in real life, because I know you have such a giving, grateful heart, caring about humanity, but your character does something that's very controversial. And you essentially, from my opinion, don't take accountability.
Yeah.
And how did you feel doing a role that is probably against your morals, your values, and the way you live your life right now?
I never judge my characters. Like I never judge people. Live and let live. Each person is individual to their decisions. And if I started judging, I would never be able to play bad guys. And I love playing bad guys. But I think what was most interesting for me when I was playing Pinky is she's an American. And I'm an Indian who's grown up in India and understands the complexity of the diversity of that country. There is no one India. There is multiple Indias, and you can spend your whole life trying to get to know it, and you'll still never know her. So this is one aspect of India that is showcased in this movie, but it's more than that. It's the story of this one man and everyone else from his perspective. So it's not us looking at him or the country. It's him looking at all of us saying, and especially with my character, she's woke, but she's fake woke, right? She's one of those girls who's like, why don't you pull yourselves out of your circumstances? My parents worked in a bodega, I pulled myself out. Why don't you do it? He doesn't have a roof over his shoulders. His family doesn't have food. It's a completely different complexity that most woke people don't have the ability to understand, including me. I lived there and I can't claim to understand it because, I have had the basic lively life rights since I was a child. I've been to school. I've had an opinion about where my future is going to be, choices. And that's what's so amazing to me about this movie, was that I leaned into playing a character that was fake woke and, pivoted when it wasn't convenient. Me and my husband both in the movie, not my real husband.
Right.
The character in the movie, both of us sort of were like, this is not the right thing. But, when it was inconvenient, we kind of stood back and watched. And that's a very human testament. Which is why this movie, which was originally a book by Arvind Diga, which came out in 2008. It was a Man Booker Prize winner. It was a New York Times bestseller. When this book came out, that's exactly what it did. It was such a human sort of transcript, human behavior, flawed, not black or white, living in gray, all of them living in gray, which is truly how we live. And it's sort of self-reflective. It should make people feel introspective and think about the last time we behaved like that. Plus, it's clever and it's sarcastic. Sarcasm is my favorite language, so I really enjoyed the tone of the movie as well.
Speaking about sarcasm, was it pretty easy for you to step into that character living in LA then, with all the fake woke people here?
I will say that I may have been inspired by my surroundings just a little bit.
I'm curious. Excuse me. I'm curious about your evolution as a woman in this industry. Typically, younger women are more desirable for opportunities in their late teens, early 20s. And it's like when you're 26, 27, it's almost like you're old as a woman and you may not be the young, sexy one anymore or something in this industry. How do you feel after getting into your late 30s now? How have you evolved personally to not allow that stigma to hold you back from being who you want to be, from accepting yourself, from loving yourself, from innovating and reinventing yourself that you've done so many times? How do you not let that stigma hold you back?
I can't say that I don't. I just am hoping that it doesn't happen to me. You know, we live in a world where anything is possible right now, as we've seen in the last few months, years as well. And I think that I remember when I was when I was 28, my mom sat me down one day and she said, you know, you girls have a shelf life, and you're reaching that where, you know, the older boys, they're always looking for the younger girl to act with. And wow. Even if they're in their 50s, you know, they're still going to be working with 20-year-olds, but you're going to be old and you need to think about a business. If acting opportunities stop coming your way, that's how I actually started my production house. Wow. Because I was like, you're right. What if I'm like, I need to be financially independent in my life. But at the same time, while this was happening to me, I recognized that innovation and reinventing who I am, even for me, is so important. And being true to the craft that I'm doing and the service that I have to provide, which is my job. So I started trying new things. I started wanting to grow. I didn't want to stagnate into doing the same kind of roles. I didn't want to stagnate in, you know, similar kind of parts or even languages and borders. And I did music. I was signed as a recording artist to Interscope, where I met Bose. I pivoted from that into television that I had never done, English language TV. Then I moved into features in America. Now I'm producing in India and America and acting in both these countries, which are two of the greatest movie industries in the world. But if I sat down to think about the glass ceiling that was built for me, I would never have a trajectory powerful enough to break it.
Wow.
Because I didn't make that glass ceiling. So I don't want to think about where it is. You know, it's been made by other people. So you just kind of have to have, you know, speed and run towards your end game and, you know, have a goal and be ambitious and fuel that ambition every single day.
What is the end game?
To have a legacy, I think. I want my children to be proud of, you know, the legacy that I've had. I want to be hopefully, you know, part of, you know, the history books of entertainment, where I may have contributed to the arts in some way, with the work that I have done or the work that I create or the work that I will do. So I want to be able to, as a woman, you know, leave a better world for the girls after us, like the women before me did for me. I don't think about voting today. I don't think about driving today. I don't think about aspiring to have the same job as a man. And all of those fights were fought by women that came before me. So it's my responsibility and our responsibility as a generation to leave it better for the next one. Yeah. So those are broad strokes of my end games.
And what, I mean, I'm sure you get this question a lot. I'm just curious because my audience is a lot of high achievers. They're big dreamers. They're going after what they want. They're learning the skills, the tools to become more confident, more giving, all those things. It sounds like you're doing everything all at the same time. How do you navigate intimacy, connection, love with, you know, your husband, your family, your friends, the people that matter the most to you? How do you navigate relationships with such a busy, full plate?
It's not easy. You know, there's not as much FaceTime as you would possibly want. But when I made the deal with the devil about, you know, running at this fast pace many years ago, I realized that there would be sacrifices that are required. And, you know, there's no free lunch in the world. And when you have ambitions, you've got to sort of pay for it. And, but I overcompensate, or I try and compensate with making sure, even if I don't have FaceTime, or if I've, like, for a very long time in my life, I missed, you know, birthdays and Diwali and New Year's, and I would always be working. all I could do was apologize. And my family always understood because, I was working at something. But I think that I made sure that I always call. I never forget birthdays. I will always call on a birthday. If I go to a city, even if I can't meet someone, my family, my friends, I'll make sure we FaceTime. We'll call. It made me very thoughtful about the people I love. I love loving the people that I care about. I love making them feel special. And I love being empathetic. And I think it's very important to leave the baggage of the job behind when you walk into your house and just be true to what you're feeling. I think it's important to choose relationships when you're really busy, because we can all be caught up in life. And, life is like a really fast river. You don't know what the currents are going to be because it's just moving. You don't know what you're going to bump into because it's just moving. But you have to choose to hold on to something when you want to take a breath, right? Just like that, you have to choose to hold on to a relationship, whatever that might be, with your children, with your family, with your parents. You have to make the time, and you have to tell the people you love that you love them. Don't just assume that they know.
You got some wisdom, Priyanka. I love this.
Oh, thank you.
I'm curious about, I know how meaningful the relationship was with your father, and he obviously got to experience a lot of your success, and I'm sure he was extremely proud of you for, the 3,000 movies and all the projects you worked on. But I'm curious, what do you think personally he would be most proud of that you've done in your life since his passing?
That I didn't give up. That I didn't rest on my laurels. He used to always push me. He would always push me to never be satisfied with what I have. He pushed my ambition. He flamed my ambition. He was always like, what's the next thing? What are we doing? He loved hearing stories about the next movies that I was doing. I used to literally narrate them to him in the hospital bed as well. This is my character. And I used to break down my characters with him, or movies that I wanted to make. And, there were phases in my life like that, a little bit of a dark phase, especially after my dad died, where I felt like I don't know if I could keep up with the life that I had built and what was expected of me by then, because I personally took a hit, and I personally was feeling sad. And, sadness is strangely seductive. It kind of sucks you in, and it's like, it feels comfortable. It feels like you're floating, and it's easy. Light might be harsh a little bit, but the joy that you feel when you choose light, when you choose to let go of the seduction of sadness. I think my dad was afraid that, because I'm very sensitive, that I would have been seduced by sadness for a long time. He was very afraid of that. Even before he died, he used to always talk to me about, don't be sad. Do not be sad. I'm not going away. I'm always with you, But I was tremendously sad. But it takes choosing yourself. And I've done that multiple times in my life. And I think it's such a powerful tool, because the longest relationship you have is with yourself.
I read somewhere about you sharing that you come into this place alone, you leave this place alone, you've got to, build that relationship with yourself. I love that you keep saying choose yourself. A friend of mine wrote a book called Choose Yourself. His name's James Altucher, and it's a really powerful book. It's about, going after you want and choosing yourself and not allowing someone else to dictate what you can and can't do and all that stuff. But I love that you keep using that phrase, because I think it's important for people to be reminded that we need to choose ourselves when no one else will choose us. We need to be there for ourselves when we're sad.
It's no one's job. It's no one's job to choose someone else. Your parents will do it for a while. Your spouses will do it for a while. Maybe your children will do it for a while. But you are no one else's responsibility but your own.
Yeah.
And what you do with your life and the choices you make dictate the sum of your life. It's such simple math, actually. We are the sum of all our choices. And, if you want to achieve something, if you want to achieve greatness, and I'll give you a small example. The White Tiger, the movie, I was never attached to it. I was never approached for it. I read about it on Twitter, that it was being made. I read in a trade magazine, I read in, Deadline actually, that The White Tiger is being adapted by the director Ramin Barani and for Netflix. And I was like, I have to be a part of this movie. I called the agents. I called my agents. I made them call the producers. I chased Ramin from Mumbai to New York to LA. I met him 3 times. I auditioned with him 3 times. I offered my services as an executive producer because I wanted the material, because I want to align myself with good content, and I believe that would be good content. And that's such an example of what's the worst that could have happened. They would have said no, and that's happened to me multiple times. It's not stopped me from trying again. That's choosing yourself.
How do we get back into manifestation mode when we have zero control in our life?
We have to use the circumstances that we're living in as an opportunity to go further in our own personal development.
What does that mean?
Period. Let me unpack this for you. To truly manifest means that you feel good. Feeling good means your energy's free, you're inspired, you are receptive, and therefore attracting towards you what you desire. So if we're in a place now where we feel like we're out of control, we're trying to get control, we're in the opposite of that manifestation state, which I refer to as being a super attractor. We're no longer connected to that power. So the way back to that power is to put our personal growth first, to get back, not go out and try to force anything or do anything out there to find control, but to turn inward, to go deeper and identify what's unresolved, work out what needs to be healed, bring forth to the surface the truth of what's up so that we can show up for it, and get back to a baseline of feeling safe, a baseline of feeling joy, a baseline of connection. Rather than thinking that I have to go get control over something, we have to return to who we are. And it's a lot of language, but I can further that too.
And what happens when we try to control our environments on the outer world, people on the outer world, schedule, food, working out, whatever it may be, when we try to control everything on the outside, but we're constantly in trigger mode. Things affect us so deeply, what's happening on the outside internally. Will that give us a sense of control if we have everything under control, but we're still triggered by everything?
So when we're triggered, we try to find control because it's a way of staying safe. Being triggered in any form is really just an activation of a sense of being unsafe. Mm-hmm. So what we're going to do in that moment is go try to control our relationship, or go try to control our food, or go do something to feel safe. And that also can come in the form of addictive behavior like overeating or drinking too much, to anesthetize and numb out that feeling of being unsafe, that feeling of being activated and triggered in a wound, in a place of fear, ultimately. So what we want to really begin to recognize is the reasons that we get triggered, and then find tools, self-soothing tools, self-help methods, breath practices for self-regulation, regulating our own nervous system, our energy, our field in those moments, so that we don't live from trigger to trigger to trigger to trigger to trigger. During COVID, man, I mean, the whole world has been triggered. So we've been in this constant state of hyper arousal, fight, flight, freeze, reactivity. And I said very early on, I said this in March of 2020, there's 2 ways you can show up for this. You can numb out and drink and use and anesthetize yourself in whatever way you do, or you can show up. And when I say show up for yourself, show up for the unresolved parts of yourself, show up for the painful stuff, show up in your therapy, show up on a show like this, show up in a self-help book, show up through a 30-day contemplative practice, whatever it is that you are guided to actually take action with it. So we had two choices, and we still have that choice. Even if it's been a year of numbing out, you can choose again right now.
Yeah. What's been the biggest internal trigger for you that still affects you today that you haven't fully gotten over the hump? Or do you feel like you've kind of mastered that part of your life?
I am in the mastery process, but I think that I will be for the rest of my life in mastery. But I'm really, really, a year ago today, I was in a much more triggered state than I am fast forward 12 months, a little more. Because like everyone else, COVID activated unresolved parts of me, feelings of feeling out of control. It's a big one for me. Like you said, feeling out of control, feeling unsafe, feeling not cared for, feeling like I have to do everything. So while I've spent the year really, really like in full blown recovery mode, like saying, hey, I see this head on, you know what hit the fan. I'm gonna show up now. I've shown up with every ounce of my being and have really come out the other side. But to your point, it's still there. So it's not that I'm completely healed and I have no triggers. The difference is that I'm so aware of those triggers. I said to my executive team today, I said, listen, guys, I said to our HR director, I would like you to go. We've been doing a lot of educating ourselves on how we want to have our company structure and team communication. And I was like, the exec team, which is our CEO and our COO and myself, we're kind of in our old habits. But our energy isn't there anymore. Like we're not those people anymore, but we're still falling into these old habits. So can you help us create the structure through which we can have boundaries and proper communication so that we can step into the new patterns of who we are? So some of it is that, we have to catch up with our own growth in a sense. And I think I've seen that personally and professionally. So it's fascinating when you make a commitment to your inner life, what can change, and then the discomfort along the way too.
Right. What would you say is what's been the biggest trigger for you in general in your life?
Feeling inadequate and unlovable.
Really?
That's the feeling.
Okay.
What triggers that feeling is feeling out of control, feeling like people aren't showing up for me. Because
and when people don't show up for you, or you don't feel like they're showing up for you the way that you want them to,
I feel inadequate and unlovable. I'm
interesting.
Wrong.
Even though they might be showing up for you fully in their capacity, if you don't feel it a certain way. I have to do
everything. No one can take care of me.
Wow. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. So how do you learn to overcome that on a daily basis when that's been so embedded for so long?
One of the tools I've been using and studying, and I plan to get trained in, is IFS therapy, internal family systems, founded by a new friend of mine called Dick Schwartz, who I will introduce you to because I'd like for you to have him on the show. I'm his new pro bono publicist, but he's truly an amazing man, and he's created a system that is one of the most profound therapeutic systems for any human, but especially those of us who have had trauma. And the internal family system, simply put, is the belief system that we have many different parts of who we are. And we have these protector parts that protect these inner child parts, like that he refers to as exiles. And so the inner child part is I'm inadequate, I'm unlovable. And the protector part is whenever that inadequacy or that fear of not being good enough or not being cared for shows up, the protector part is I'm going to control everything around me. So that's the part I call the controller, right? Another one of my protector parts is knives out, right? So that's the part of me that's like, if you mess with me, the knives are out. Don't
right.
Right. And another protector part could be for somebody, even numbing out could be a protector part, right? Or drinking or addiction can be an extreme protector part. So there's no bad parts, as Dick says, but the work is to really get to a deep connection with what IFS refers to as self-energy. Self could be considered, in my words, source, inner guidance system, the universe, God, the part of you, the all-knowing, loving, caring, parental part of you, really, the part of you that can care for those more extreme parts. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. It's a pretty dense idea, and it's quite the opposite of what we've been brought up to believe in. But I'm very clear that one of my intentions, because I've been practicing IFS for 8 years with my therapist, and it has had a profound impact on my well-being and my experience of other humans and my ability to witness people with compassion, even people who are really in bad ways, or people who have done harmful things, but to see them with compassion because I can see them in all of their parts.
Right. And when someone's being aggressive or angry or in knives out mode or addiction mode, when you can see it in yourself, you can see it in other people. And when you can have compassion in yourself and the way you've been now or in the past, then you can start to look at other people and say, well, I don't agree with this, but I'm not going to scream at them and yell at them or get angry at them, but I can have compassion and learn to communicate in a way that they could connect with and resonate in this moment.
I love that you just nailed that so perfectly, which is what is your gift, because you just said when you see it in yourself, you can see it in other people.
Yeah.
That is such an important point to make, because when we start to do our own personal growth work, one of the greatest benefits, one of the greatest gifts is that we start to have a greater sense of compassion for others because we recognize that we're all suffering. Wow, if I can suffer that much, then I can't imagine what that person's going through. We are all in this together.
Judgment's been something that I've been working with a lot with myself and other people, especially during the last year where politics and cancel culture and right and wrong communication is constantly being talked about on social media. And I've constantly tried to check myself and say, okay, I don't agree with this, but I don't need to judge this person for their beliefs or where they're at. And when I come from a place of non-judgment, when what's happening in the world, I feel more at peace. When I'm judging, I feel lower sense of energy. I feel, angry. I fixate on something like a dog trying to get a bone, as opposed to thinking more abundant and thinking about my vision. I'm focused more on like right and wrong. I love your book about judgment, having a detox from judgments, and I'm curious, where do you still judge the most today in your life, whether it be with yourself, the world, your environment? Where's today prevalent for you, even though you're the expert in this? Sometimes the people that write the things that they need the most. So what's the part that's for you?
Oh yeah, man. Listen, I wrote a book called Judgment Detox. It's very brave to put your face on the cover of a book with that title, because, whenever I'm caught out judging a friend, or if they look at me like, isn't that the girl that wrote Judgment Detox? Right? Like, oh, what the hell is she saying? Just yesterday, I was faced with a very big moment of, is this my opportunity to be radically honest, because I'm trying to practice radical honesty
and non-judgmental at the same time.
But how can I be non-judgmental in my assessment of this radical honest moment?
That's tricky.
It was, because the friend that I was in this dialogue with she's like, I just feel so judged by you. And in my head, I'm like, and my radical honesty part said, I am really judging you, but this is why. And when I got into the why is backed with data. The why is backed with concern for others. The why is backed with overarching care for the world. So I felt really grounded in the why. And when you practice radical honesty and you tell someone the truth, the biggest way that it is the most effective is to say it from a non-judgmental place. To say,
so how could you cue that up? If you don't like something about your partner or your family member, a friend, a coworker, what can you say to them in a non-judgmental way, but radical honesty? Yeah.
Here's how I would have liked to have said it to her. I was still heated when I said it, so it came out as judgment. She wasn't wrong about that. But I would have liked to have said to her, by By the way, I want you to see the slippers that I'm wearing right now.
I love it. I love
that. Party on the top, slippers on the bottom. So I would have liked to have said to her, I have no intention of changing you. I welcome you to tell me whatever it is that you need to say. I just want to be able to tell you the truth first, and then you have every right to tell me exactly how you feel. I want to be honest with you so that I don't hold on to it and so that we can clear the air. And it's important for me to let you know my opinion about this matter. So here it is. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then when expressing it, speak about it honestly. And then using nonviolent communication, which would really imply, I'm noticing this. It makes me feel this way. I think a resolution could be this. How about that? Yeah. And just coming at it from a place of human to human connection rather than trigger to trigger. Mm-hmm. So if I could do it over, I would have done it that way. Maybe she'll watch this.
Exactly.
I'll send it to her.
And why do you think most people are blocking themselves in general from having what they want, whether it be the relationship or the financial abundance or the peace that they want, internal peace? What's the main blocker? Is it judgment? Is it anger and frustration? Is it their childhood traumas? What's the main thing?
It's all of the above, but the root cause of our blocks is unresolved programmed belief systems about ourselves that we repurpose and replay and project onto the future every single waking moment of the day in every area. When I say every area, there may be some areas of your life where that belief system doesn't have a hold on you. Whereas, let's say maybe your finances are flowing, everything's cool, you do great at work, but in your relationships, you're just blocked, like it's just constant. So these unresolved areas have a root cause condition that have tentacles, and it can be in all areas, or it can be in some areas, or it can be in a specific area. And the blocks are the result of a energetic disturbance that is on repeat. The way out of that, the way to get unstuck, is to change our internal nervous system, our belief systems, and all the energy that's wrapped up around that. That's not easy. Yeah, you're going to say, how do you do that?
Well, I mean, say someone listening is 30, 40, 50 years old and they've had a belief for that, for decades of their life. Is it as easy as being aware and conscious and the belief shifting in a moment, or do things really take a long time to shift a belief?
I think I believe in quantum shifts, but I do believe that quantum shifts often come with a lot of practice and recovery.
Yeah, it's like you spend years of working on it, and then all of a sudden it works.
It was funny. When I was talking to Dick Schwartz, the founder of IFS, I said to him, Dick, it feels like it's been 10 years of hard work for overnight relationship to self, And he's like, yeah, I've heard that before. Because that there was this, I had been in IFS therapy for 8 years. And then all of a sudden one day it clicked. I was like, oh my God, my internal resourced self can care for the controller and can care for the little girl and can really navigate the system internally and get those parts out of their extreme roles. And she can be so loving and compassionate. And she's not always going to be there, but she's going to be there more often than not. Holy crap. That was, 8 years in therapy doing IFS and then, 15 years of hardcore recovery.
Right.
So it isn't that, but here's the good news. We may not have that click aha moment overnight, but we have to recognize that every moment of relief along the way is a miracle. The more we add up those moments of relief, the more we live a miraculous life. So the idea that growth is hard and we have to do so much and it's so heavy, we can unpack that by really witnessing that we can have fun along the way.
Yeah.
You can celebrate the small wins. You can enjoy the moments of relief. You can even enjoy the process of personal growth, which sounds insane, but I do.
No, yesterday I felt like the last few months have been emotionally challenging, ups and downs. I haven't felt the sense of like stable emotions with certain people in my life. And I've been like, man, can I just have one day where it's not, wondering what's going to happen next. And yesterday was that day where I was like, man, this is a peaceful day. And even though I don't feel like I've had a lot of peace consistently for the last few months, I was like, I can really appreciate the full day. I can journal. I get to journal about this and reflect back like what was happening and how can I do that for one more day.
Right.
How can I do that one more day in my life and not think about the rest of my life, but just today? What can I do to show up for myself, for peace, for my environment, for the people in my life, and continue to be in progress, like you said, and continue to work on it. And it's a beautiful thing when we can, I guess, reflect on those moments and build the miracle over time. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's like build it over time, like you said. And is there an exercise or a process that you have about evaluating our beliefs and figuring out which ones truly support us and which ones are tearing us down, and then how to replace a belief that's been so ingrained in your psyche for so long?
I have a wonderful method from my book, Super Attractor, that I often say if it's the only method from the book that somebody applies, they can experience a miraculous shift from that alone. It's called the choose again method. Mm-hmm. And the first step is to notice the negative thoughts that you have on repeat and notice how they make you feel. So in the moment, if you can catch yourself, you can't always catch yourself, but if you start practicing this often enough, you'll get good at it. Notice, oh, there's that thought again. Oh my God. And how is it making me feel? Step one, making me feel tight in my chest. It's making me feel anxious. It's making me feel like I want to go punch the wall. It's making me feel X, Y, Z. So you can even write it down. You can just think about it. Step two is really important. It's to forgive yourself for having the thought. Mm-hmm. When you forgive yourself for having that thought, what happens is that you no longer identify with it. You just see it as a thought that you keep thinking. You just see it, oh, there's that freaking thought again.
So it's not, this is my thought. This is a thought that I'm thinking in the moment. Yeah.
It's just that thought that I've thought again and again. There it is. There's that thought again. I'm not good enough. There's that thought again. I'm bad. There's that thought again. No one loves me. There's that thought again. I can't handle this. Oh, it's just there again. Right? Mm-hmm. Just notice the thought. Oh, forgive the thought. Forgive yourself for having the thought. And what happened? Abraham Hicks says that a belief is just a thought that you keep thinking. When you forgive yourself for having the thought, you no longer believe that that thought is you. You see it as a thought that you keep thinking. The third step is the fun part. That's when you can choose again, where you can reach for the next best feeling thought. So in the moment, you would reach for the next best feeling thought being something that you believe in. So I always use the example. If your thought is I'm broke, I don't want you to choose again with I'm a millionaire, because the ego part of you, the fear part of you is going to be like, yeah, freaking right. Nice try. Right. You want to reach for the thought of I have that job interview next week and I'm excited about it. I have LinkedIn, which is an incredible resource. I can reach out to that friend who knows so-and-so. I have the skill set that I am really proud of. I have this education behind me. I have this resume. Whatever it is that you can lean into, that you believe in, that empowers you, that makes you feel good. And once you start to get into a momentum with feeling better, you reach for more. And you reach for more and you reach for more. And you choose again, and you choose again, and you choose again. You get into the habit of that. It's fun.
Before we continue this video, make sure to subscribe below and turn on the notification bell right now so you don't miss out on these great videos every single day. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in the last decade for you?
That things first of all, keep getting better. I think in our society, especially as it relates to, as you get older, at least in my family, there was a lot of kind of cultural expectations like, oh, over this age, it kind of starts going down, or you know what I mean? You peak when you're young, and that's when all the good stuff happens. And for me, I feel like it keeps getting better. And I love that the best years are still ahead of me, and that all the stuff that I've been through, there's like all of these exciting new possibilities. So that's one of the biggest lessons. And I think the other one is that I don't have to stress as hard. Like, as a human being, I have a really strong work ethic, but I also tend to put a lot of pressure on myself. And the other lesson I've learned is that I don't need to do that the work actually gets done more joyfully and more creatively if I don't add on that additional layer of pressure and stress.
Why do you pressure yourself?
I have really high expectations. I want to take care of my team. I want to take care of my family. I want to do right by my customers. Like with this book, I wanted to do right by my publishing partners. And I always feel a sense of responsibility to make sure that I'm taking care of people. And embedded in that, I have historically put a ton of pressure on myself to make sure, that the buck stops with me. But I think recently it's been really great to see how awesome it is to collaborate with people who are like, girl, I got this. Like, you're good, you go do your thing, I'll do my thing, and we'll create something together that's magic. And I've been like, this is amazing.
Don't stress about it, Yeah. What's been the biggest challenge in the last 10 years?
I think the biggest challenge for me in the past decade, that's a good question.
You started Marie TV, what, 8 years ago? 9?
Yeah, so to put this all in context, so I've been doing what I've been doing for 20 years now.
Yeah.
So creating free content via email, back starting in like 2000, 2001, which seems like
crazy,
insane. Then blogging, and then I got Kuma in 2009. Kuma's my dog, my toy Australian
Sweet
Shepherd.
little dog.
He's a sweet little pup. And here's the thing, when we first got him as a puppy and I was training him along with Josh, I didn't have time to write as many.
Josh?
No, training Kuma along with Josh. Josh knew what he was doing. I was just like, what do I do with a puppy? I didn't have as much time to write blog posts, and so I just started opening my webcam on my MacBook Pro and talking right into the camera.
I remember those early videos.
Yeah, they're still on the site.
Yeah.
And so Marie TV was actually started not because I had some big vision for like a show that I wanted to do. It was actually because I didn't have much time because I had a really cute new puppy and I needed to get consistent content out, and I felt much more comfortable and it was faster to talk into my webcam than it was to construct a blog post. So that's how Marie TV started back in like 2009/2010.
So it's been almost 10 years. It'd be 10 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think one of the challenges of the past decade has just been to continue to stay really present with all of the work while continuing to grow the company, like making sure that folks on the team have the support that they need, making sure that we're attracting the right talent, people that have the right skills, the right culture fit, and just keeping all those plates in the air. And then of course still having a life and making sure my relationship, stays on track.
How do you stay on track with a connected, loving relationship as a female entrepreneur when you're putting so much energy into your business and the culture and the team and your customers? And
I made so many mistakes. I mean, let's just be real. Like I talk about this and I've told this story, like, I worked so hard to get my business off the ground, and I was often working 7 days a week, not just coaching, like that was a portion of what I did, but to keep a roof over my head, it was bartending, it was waiting tables, it was like being a personal assistant, cleaning people's toilets, whatever I needed to do in order to pay my rent, put food on the table and actually continue to grow the business. So I basically developed a habit of working nonstop. And
before Marie TV.
Oh yeah, like getting the business off the ground. I worked side
gigs.
Like
a fitness coach, you did like dance instructions, you did everything.
I was a Nike Elite dance athlete. I, taught anywhere from like 3 to 7 classes a week at Crunch Fitness. Some of them were choreographed, some of them were basic fitness. I had the coaching clients, I was doing the content, and I was bartending and waiting tables. So I had developed this habit of nonstop work because that was what was necessary at that time.
New York.
Yes.
Yeah.
But as Josh and I, got together, and eventually when I let go of the bartending and the waiting tables and even the dance and fitness as a revenue stream, I didn't let go of the habit of working nonstop. And that created some real problems in the relationship, where it was to the point that him and I had been together for 7 years and never taken a vacation together.
Wow.
Like, we had traveled because either he had something for his work or I had something for my work, but it was always work related. So it wasn't actual just together time, just him and I. And our relationship was almost over. Like, he was kind of done with me.
Wow. Because you were just, I want to work, I got to build my business, you don't understand me, this is my dream.
I was operating too out of a lot of scarcity and a lot of just habit, like feeling like if I didn't work constantly, that it was all going to fall apart. And so there were other things mixed in there as well. You know, there were other layers of just life pressures from all these different ends. But that was like a definite, a critical piece.
He had a son.
Oh, yeah.
And,
so my stepson Zane came into my life when he was 7. So the year that Josh and I kind of, you know, one of the times, we've had many bumps along the road. We've been together for 16 years. Any couple that's been together that long, it's not all unicorns and
perfect.
rainbows. No, absolutely not. Relationships are so difficult. But at that particular juncture, Zane was going off to college, which that was a really big thing in terms of Josh processing that, you know, having your kid go off after you've raised them, and then me working all the time. There was this confluence of stressors that put us in couples therapy, and I had to really change a lot about how I was living, what I was believing, and really putting things back into perspective, which, you know, saved our relationship.
What were you believing?
Well, I was believing that if I didn't work constantly, that I wasn't a worthy person, that I wasn't doing enough to make my business successful, that I was perhaps letting people down. And so I had to really shift that and understand that, you know, I come from a background, I don't come from a wealthy background. So the work ethic in my nuclear family is very strong. Like my dad owned a small business. My mom, although she stayed home with us, she was constantly doing stuff, constantly working, constantly fixing things, constantly doing things that took care of the family. So that's the kind of DNA I grew up with, was like, no, if something needs to get done, you get it done.
Yeah.
It's not like you sit around all day and eating bonbons and watching TV.
Yeah.
So, so that's kind of how I got there. But then I had to readjust if I actually wanted to not only have a successful business, but have a successful life.
Yeah, well, I'm assuming you get asked this a lot by other
Sometimes.
women. Do you ever feel pressure or judged or whatever, critiqued because you don't have kids yet? And I think you don't want to have kids, is that correct?
Yeah, no, it is. So I want to actually hit on all of those, because each that you mentioned, pressured, judged, or critiqued.
Yeah.
So let's stick with pressured, judged, or critiqued, because those are very distinct flavors.
Yes.
So at this stage, I don't get asked as much anymore because I've been talking about it so consistently and trying to be as loving and just straight up as possible about the fact that I've never wanted kids. And real about the fact that I chose, consciously or unconsciously, a man who already had a child. So some part of me clearly wanted to be a stepmom because I am.
Right.
And I love my stepson, and he's awesome. So there's that. But I've never wanted to have my own biological kids.
Why is that, do you think?
You know, I've also never wanted to get married. I just think that we're all kind of born with these innate desires, and sometimes we adopt the expectations of our family, of society, of the culture that we grew up in. For whatever reason, I feel like I popped onto this earth with a very clear inner compass of the things that I would like to explore or learn or experience, and also a very clear compass of those things which I just am not interested in. I don't not want it for other people. It's almost like when you go to a beautiful buffet, right? And you walk up and you're like, oh my goodness, there's these vegetables, and oh, there's these desserts and these possibilities. You don't necessarily take from every option that's there. You're naturally attracted to some things over the other. And so in my life, I've always known what I want to go after. And the little plate that has have children, and the little plate that's like get married
was not in your...
I just was like, that's not for me.
Not desirable.
It's not my path. Yeah. And so earlier on in my life, I had many people tell me that I'm making the worst mistake ever, that I'm gonna regret it.
Both marriage and not having babies and not being
mostly
married?
babies.
Yeah.
Mostly babies. Was that I was going to, reach some age and just absolutely hate myself, and like it would be the biggest mistake of my life, that I was going to die alone. And I'm like, I'm going to die alone anyway.
We're all dying alone.
That's exactly right.
We're not holding hands, dying with someone crossing
likely
over.
Not, unless God forbid a plane goes down.
Yeah.
Right. So there was that in terms of so the feeling judged about it and criticized. Let's go into those pockets because that's interesting to me. I have had folks, and I can understand this, so I do understand it, but I think that there is just room to explore it and have a discussion. When it comes to having a conversation around productivity, having a conversation around business growth, having a conversation around priorities, and people can be very bold and courageous on like an Instagram comment where they wouldn't be nearly so, if you were sitting across the table and just having a conversation, it was like, well, it's easy for you to say, those of us that have kids. And I'm like, now all of a sudden, anything that comes out of my mouth is all of a sudden without merit because I have not given biological birth to a child through my vagina.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Right.
Is that where we're going to take this? Oh, and by the way, let's take a look at other folks that I have worked with who have 7 kids, 8 kids, who say, oh, I found value in this principle, and here's how I made this idea work in the context of my life. So I think that it's really interesting to have someone judge another person for their choices.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that it's...
So how do you handle being judged for that or for anything?
Oh, I give absolutely no
attention.
F's.
Right, yeah,
I
don't care.
I don't, because, the more you care about what other people think, the more they own you.
The more power they have over you.
Yeah, and it's like, I want people to win. That's who I am as a person. I want people to win. I want them to be well. I want them to be successful. If there's anything that I could possibly share, that even a tiny nugget of what I share helps them become more of who they want to be, then I feel I have done my job successfully. Do I have all the answers? Absolutely not. No way. Yeah. No one has all the answers. But I do believe that what we create in our company and the programs we put together and the things that we share help people find their own answers. So I don't care.
Yeah.
I really don't care, because if someone is going to take the time to either make that comment or that judgment, my perspective would be that there's something in their own life that's not working that puts them in that position of feeling a sense of pain or feeling like they have to judge someone else to justify what's happening in their own life.
Yeah.
I just don't think that gets any of us anywhere.
So what do you do when people are judging you online, or do you just delete? Do you just leave it and don't respond? Do you just say thank you for the feedback and move on?
If it depends, I think contextually. Like if someone has a different opinion and they express it respectfully, amazing.
Yeah.
If someone's being hateful and trying to incite other people into a space of negativity and there's no basis in fact, there's no desire to have a meaningful conversation, again, depending on where it is. Like we have a very, very clear and strong boundary in our programs. Like there's like a zero negativity, zero drama, zero bullshit policy that we have. Because no one can learn if they're in an unsafe environment. And if you feel like, expressing an opinion or just kind of taking people down this drama-filled road, that's not why we're here. In the context of my business, in the context of trying to help people gain skills and understandings. It's like, if you want to go have contentious conversations,
go do it with a group of people.
Do it on your own page.
Yeah, exactly.
Go do it on your living room, or go hold a community gathering. Invite people, correct, or whatever, but not in the learning environment that you have entrusted me to support you in. That's not about to happen. But on public pages, again, if it's just someone who actually just wants to have a meaningful conversation, which is, the exception, not the rule, let's have that meaningful conversation. But if it's someone who's just looking to kind of take a dump in your living room and stir the shit, I'm like, nah.
Yeah.
Nah, not interested.
So how do you navigate your relationship? Let's say, I don't know if Josh wants to get married or not, but if he wanted to get married at some point.
Yeah.
Like 10 years down the line, he was like, you know what, I just really want to be married.
Yeah.
Would that be something you'd be open to or changing your mind about?
Yeah.
And what if he's like, I really want to have another kid?
Yeah, we've had the kid conversation, so I'm very clear on that one. Yeah, because I think that it's important, especially for couples, I think it's important to have those real conversations about.
Early.
Yes. So we tackled that one.
Okay.
And we talked about it, and he was really loving and open with me, like, hey, especially, after being together 16 years in the early part, he's like, if you change your mind and want to have kids, like, I would love to have a kid with you. Wow. So he's like, but I don't feel I have my son. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's a father already, so there was no.
It's not pressuring you.
No, it was
great.
just more like the open invitation. And then in terms of marriage, I don't like to say never to anything. I just like to be honest about my truth in this moment. But if there came a point in the future where something in me goes like, I'm super into this, and he was like, I'm super into this too, let's do it, that very well could happen. And I'm super open with that. But what I love about our relationship is we throw it on the table and we talk about it.
Everything.
Yes.
All the time. I think that's the best way to do it.
It's the only way, because we human beings are complex. And expecting another person to just capitulate to your desires or what you really, it's like, it doesn't honor their individuality. And I really believe that there is a way to nurture and love and support the growth of the person that you love without pressuring them consciously or subconsciously to bend at your will.
Right, or manipulative or passive aggressive in some ways to get them to do something they don't want to do. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for us, and the last thing I'll say on this, like in terms of a romantic relationship, the most important things to me, like, do we actually love each other? Do we respect each other? Are we loyal to one another? Is there love and passion? Do we feel a sense of intimacy and connection? You know what I mean? It's like on a day-to-day basis, are we waking up so excited to be with one another? Not that it's always that way. I'm just talking the vast majority of the time. Is shit on track? And if it is, in my book, winning.
You're winning, yeah.
Super winning.
Yeah.
Like,
if you're 80% of the time, things are positive.
Correct.
And pretty smooth. It's pretty good.
And you still love that person. You want to be with them. So like with Josh, it's like, he is my human. He is my person. We love our lives together. And when our work takes us, we're like, okay, what's our next adventure together? Or like, when do we get to see each other? Or we switch our plans so that we have that night together if it was going to be 3 weeks of going in different directions. And I'll be like, I will fly home, even if it's just for dinner or whatever. Or, do you know what I mean?
That's cool.
But that to me means more than a marriage certificate. Again, this is just
your personal truth.
This is my own personal truth, not for other people.
Of course.
Just for me.
Where do you think you'd be if you were single the last 10 years?
Oh my goodness.
Like, would your business be as successful, do you think? Again, we're just...
I know it's hypotheticals.
Do you think, I don't know, you'd be distracted, or where do you think you would be?
It's a great question. I don't know the honest answer to that, but I would be lying if I didn't say that the love and the depth of trust and connection that we have together, it's impossible that hasn't positively impacted my business.
Yeah.
Being single these past 10 years, like sometimes I honestly will go out and about and I look up and I'm like, thank you, sweet Jesus, to that I am not kind of out on the scene. I just, and like bless people that are, and I hope for everyone who wants love to have love and to find love in the form that's good for them. But I'm just real happy. So I don't even know.
Do you think your business would be,
as
profitable and successful?
To be really honest, it could go either way. Like depending on how wild and crazy I got over those last 10 years, I could envision a version where it wasn't, but I could also envision a version that it was actually technically more successful. Who knows?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It could have been like
more financially successful
or something. Just because why? Because I didn't take those exactly.
Just didn't take a break.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And so that's as possible, as the other one.
Do you know any examples of individuals who have extremely successful brands, careers, or businesses who are single after 40, where they have healthy businesses and they are happy? Do you have any friends like that, like females, males like that, who are single or
really
not married, no kids, and they're just crushing and happy and fulfilled?
I don't. I was thinking about a friend that I have who is in her 60s, who is not married, but now recently has a boyfriend, but she also does have a child, but it's an adult child. And she's very happy and she's very satisfied with her life.
She's been single for a while?
She was single for a very good portion of her adult life, and only within the last year has a new boyfriend.
And she did really well.
And she did really well. And she's amazingly happy. So that's one that comes to mind. I'm trying to think. Most of my other dear friends are in some type of partnership, marriage.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm always curious about that, because I think about the men that I admire the most. They're typically in a committed marriage or some type of committed relationship.
Yes.
And their businesses take off when they have that support.
Yeah.
As opposed to just the distractions that are out in the world.
Yeah. I think there's something settling that happens for us when we have someone that we want to devote our love to and invest in that person and who they are.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like it.
Yeah.
I do.
This book came about, I think, from an Oprah talk that you did 3 years ago, almost 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago. Is that what it was?
The idea I'd been talking about for
a while,
for like 2 decades.
But your mom taught you this when you were younger, growing up.
Yep.
But then you did a speech on it, which I saw, which was amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, here in LA. And everyone's been asking you to do a book for a decade, and you finally decided to do one.
Yes.
Why do you feel like you wanted to do one now? And why this topic and not something else?
So the why now piece was a lot about trusting myself. You know, when I think any of us have opportunities knocking at the door, it can feel easy to be like, oh, I need to say yes because, you know, this window of opportunity isn't going to be open long, or this is going to help me quote unquote get ahead, or, you know, I need to make sure I still maintain my edge and get out there.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's been a big lesson for me is to always trust my own timing and not the exterior pressures of the world. And when those calls kept coming in, like, we need a book from you, let's do a business book, let's do whatever book, I was like, no, it doesn't. It feels like there's a seed that's been planted. And just like a real life plant, you know, that seed takes some time. You have to water it. There needs to be the right nutrients in the soil, needs to be the right weather. And then even as the seedling comes up out of the ground, you can't tug on it too fast to get it to bloom faster. You know what I mean? Like you have to nurture it.
Yeah.
And it has to take the time it takes to come into its full possibility. And that's how I felt with this book. I had known that there was a big idea I wanted to write about. When Oprah and her team had asked me to speak at Super Soul Sessions, the first thought about what the title of the talk would be was Everything is Figureoutable. And then I had appeared in my mental theater, this is your book. Like it wasn't even like it was a decision. It was like the seedling had come up and go, this is me. Now you are going to be ready to, you know what I mean? So, but the bigger reason in terms of an exterior reason, there's 2 things. One, we have a lot of challenges collectively happening right now. You know, there's over 350 million people around the world that suffer from depression. Their suicide rates in the United States are at a 30-year high. You know, that speaks nothing of the economic, political, pollution, thinking about every level of inequality and injustice that impacts us. So we've got a lot of problems that both individually and collectively we need to solve. And I ran into a mutual friend of ours, Toby, who runs Shopify. I think you know him. I was actually working on the manuscript at like a restaurant in New York, and he walked in and I was like, oh my goodness, because he's from Canada. I'm like, what are you doing here? And we caught up and he's like, why are you writing a book? You're so busy with the rest of your business. It's not like you need to write a book. And this is what I told him. I said, Toby, honestly, I feel like if I were to walk out in the street right now and I got hit by a bus, this is the one idea that I would want to leave behind. From every Marie TV, from everything I've ever done, I feel like if I can somehow communicate this idea in a book form in a way that people can really get, that I could leave and go to that next chapter being like, peace, y'all, I did my thing, right? Like, I'm fine, I'm good. So that's the reason I wanted to write this book, because I feel like every single one of us has such innate wisdom and so many capabilities that we're not even fully aware of. And that if I could write about this simple 3-word phrase that has helped me at every single stage of my life and continues to help me to this day, I still use it every day, that it would give people a tool that could serve them regardless of where they come from, regardless of their age, regardless of their economic background, regardless of their cultural background, because it's so simple. It's not complex. Simple. I joked because I struggled a lot through the writing process.
You're like, it's so simple.
It's so simple. Well, I remember like at points kind of tearing my hair out, feeling so terrible, like I'm a bad writer and I don't know if any of this is good. And going like this, I made the joke. I was like, can't we just write a book with everything is figure outable on the cover and then there's blank pages throughout? Like that's it. That like on a very kind of joking but meta level, like this is all you need to know.
That's it. Yeah.
Loneliness happens for a lot of reasons. Loneliness occurs, I think, for some people, it's because we never let people truly know us, either because it doesn't feel safe or we don't truly know ourselves.
Ooh, how do we get to know ourselves?
You have to be curious.